Hi, everyone. I'm Ivan Biyuki, and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Today, we have a very, very special guest joining us, Dr. Marc Faber, the editor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Al-
You look
al-
so smiling.
Always happy to have you on.
Ivan's always happy. Ivan's always happy. So,
Dr. Faber, you're a student of history, and how is the current economic environment similar to the Great Depression, or is it not similar?
Well, I think we have, I mean, what I think about history is that no event in history is exactly as in the past. There are always differences. And one of the principal differences at the present time is that in the 30s, the government as a percent of the economy was much smaller. And we didn't have social security yet, except some maybe in Germany, but not to a major extent. But we didn't have social security in the United States. So when people became unemployed, they had to find a job or somehow to survive. Number two, our society in the Western world has changed a lot. As you know, the importance throughout history, the social security for individuals was the family.
Right.
Like in most of the world, we don't have social security as we have in the Western world in other countries. And so in a more tribal society, in nomadic societies and so forth, the unit is the family. You're sick, your brothers and sisters, parents, and whatever will essentially look after you to some extent, not perfectly well, but probably better than social security. Anyway, this we have today and we didn't have then. And we had in the 30s deflation. We have to think very carefully how deflation would come about in the present time, because we have central banks that do print money. And if you print money, you cannot avoid depression, but you could probably have a depression amidst inflation or very high inflation rates. That's possible. Or as you know, when you print money, the money flows irregularly into the economy. My sense is, and I've just written about this, and I wrote already last year to some extent about it. If I look at the present environment, it reminds me a lot about the early 70s. You may, I mean, you don't remember because you may not have been born then, but I was already born. You see, I'm a dinosaur of the investment world. And anyway, in 73, after we had a lot of speculation in stocks already in the late 60s in America, and then a boom in the Nifty 50 stocks. These were favorite stocks like Amazon and Netflix until late last year. In the 70s, the OPEC countries, OPEC had been formed at the time, they increased the oil price sharply, and then the Federal Reserve in the United States, they increased interest rates. And I have to point out, ahead of the 73, 74 recession, the prime rate, or what we would call today the Fed fund rate, was over 12%. You know, this was a remarkable increase in interest rates. Today, the Fed, in Europe, we have record high inflation, higher than in the 70s. And Lagarde sits there, she's the president of the ECB, and still dreams of transitory, and says, well, maybe we will cut down on the expansion of the ECB balance sheet by the third quarter, maybe.
maybe.
You understand? We have today among these academics at central banks, people that are, I mean, they're worse than the worst vogue in terms of social sciences. And the Fed is now at 0.5% Fed fund rate, when the cost of living, like for you or your family and most of your viewers, the cost of living are going up by, I don't know, each family is different, but it's for sure between 7 and 12% per annum,
Yeah.
but for sure. And of course, the Fed members sit there and they say, oh, we'll cool down. I just received an article by Bill Dudley. He was a Fed member. And he showed the projections of the Federal Reserve in the United States up to the year 2025. They think that the Fed fund rate will be in 2024, in other words, in 2 years' time, at 2%.
Yeah, they're crazy.
But you understand, we are dealing here with a rate of inflation, of price increases of something like, I don't know, 8%. And the Fed is debating about like a 2% increase in interest rates. Are they mad or what?
They're in denial. They're in denial. They're praying.
Insane.
They're praying that it just all goes away and they don't have to take the tough medicine of raising interest rates, because they know they're going to destroy the housing market. They're going to destroy the economy. The federal government can't afford to raise interest rates. They can't afford the debt.
But I want to introduce here an idea. They'll destroy it anyway, because if you look at the way Treasury bonds have acted in the US and in Europe, we had the worst decline in the bond market ever between 2020 and today. Mm-hmm. If you look at the ETF for Treasury bonds, the symbol is TLT. That gives you the level of the bond market in the US. It's already collapsed. And I think they're oversold, and I think they can rally temporary. But long term, I think that interest rates will go much higher, but much higher.
And then the question becomes, at what point does the stock market will go down, the housing market will start rolling over, unemployment will start going up. Is there a point where the Fed has to give up and go back to easy money? Is there a point where the Fed says, we got to save the economy, we can't even think about inflation, we have to go back and save the economy? When did they change?
Well, you make a very good point, because as you know, the stock market in the US bottomed out on May 17th. Since then, it's rallied about 9%. Now, the last 2 days, it came off a little bit. But I think the market became very oversold. But the reason for the rally, in my opinion, is the belief among stockholders, including to some extent my belief, that the Fed will not even go to 1.5% on the Fed fund rate. Mm-hmm. I think we are already in recession if you analyze clearly the standards of living of people and their real incomes, inflation adjusted. If you do a thorough analysis, now people say, well, look at how healthy spending is in the US. Yeah, look also at the decline in the savings rate and the increase in short-term borrowings and so forth. You understand? You have to look at everything.
Yeah, and it's getting worse, because a lot of different areas of the country, of the world, are having massive food price increases, energy price increases. The people just can't afford to live anymore. Even if you are working and have a salary, people can't afford the basics anymore in many of these countries. And it's really, you're seeing riots, you're seeing protests.
But I agree with you. But you also have to think about this. The madness of government is limitless, endless. When you think about it, they had these lockdowns. These bureaucrats, most of them have never worked in the private sector before. They think you can shut down an economy with lockdowns and then switch on a light, and everything works again.
Yeah.
Why do we have all these flight cancellations and delays?
Right.
The airports are there, the runways are there, but the people who look after them are not there. And this is all government interventions. You look at this crazy, I've never heard of baby formula before in my life.
Yeah.
But I was never pregnant so far.
Hey, hey,
cancel culture
it
people.
Could happen one of these. It could happen one of these days. Be
careful. I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
I have to take anti-baby pills.
Yeah. Well, men can have periods now. That's what I've been told.
That's right.
Well, you know, I have to believe what they tell you in Congress and what this new Supreme Court judge is gonna do. Anyway, I asked in the nightlife some girls, you know, have you ever, when you have a baby, how do you feed them? I was fed with milk, period. Yeah. Maybe they mix some bananas in the stuff and so forth. But for sure, I never had any baby formula. And I'd like to tell all the parents in the whole world, don't ever give any food to your babies that is produced by the healthcare industry. You'd be mad.
That's a good point.
All unhealthy.
Yeah, Dr. Faber, what's your outlook on precious metals going into 2023 for silver and gold? Are you buying right now?
Yes, actually, last week I bought some around 1800 for gold. But look, I just wrote about this. I said gold has performed as conservative, long-term, patient investors would have expected. It has performed disappointingly the way speculators, nervous day traders expected, and greedy people expected. If you look at the gold price, $35 in 1968. It was $300 in 1999. Actually, the low was $255. It was $1,000 in 2015, and we're now at 1,850. I don't think it's so bad.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to have our editor put this chart on the screen, but gold has outperformed the S&P 500 since the year 2000. So if you compare gold to the S&P 500, it's ahead over the past 22 years, and people don't realize that.
Yes, and it was a period of dollar strength. You know, in other currencies, it's done much better.
Yeah.
Then, say, if you look at the Euro 50 stock index, these are the 50 largest companies in Europe. Half of them are run by brain damaged people, namely the financial sector. But aside from that, the Euro stock index is hardly higher than in 1998. So gold has way outperformed European stocks with a few exceptions. Now, I'm not saying that gold is the best investment. I'm just trying to explain to people that, in my opinion, as long as the government doesn't take it away from you, and there is a risk, but if you listen to these autocrats that gather at Davos, at the World Economic Forums, and they tell you about useless people, and I'm very interested to hear ones from the Davos seminar, who they consider useless people. I hope that I qualify as a useless person, because that would be a compliment from me, getting this designation from these idiots at the WEF.
You know, we're going to all have to start eating the bugs soon, right? No more meat, no more alcohol, and we all have to eat the bugs, right?
That's their plan.
But I mean, I'm thinking of launching, referendum in Switzerland because you only need 100,000 signature. That Switzerland, that is, kind of the oldest democracy in the Western world, where everybody could vote. In essence, they had democracy, but only some people could vote. The way I think democracy should be organized. I don't think that people who can't read and write should vote.
And
anyway.
no more women voting. Would that solve a lot of problems?
Yes, that for sure. I will write a book about this. The last true chauvinist.
Okay, we just lost 10% of our audience there.
Maybe you can become my contributing editor.
Yeah. I'll write a chapter for your book.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Anyway, they also tell you, well, in 10 years' time, people shouldn't have any possessions. But then you look at the airport at Davos is full of private planes. So I imagine, or I suppose, that the Davos participants, there were this year 2,500 altogether, but maybe only, I don't know, 1,000 that are active. But anyway, of these people, they're not going to give up their private planes. You can be sure of that.
But they want all the poor people in the world to follow these rules and their recommendations, but not for them, right?
It's a fascist movement, this WEF.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, you should start the referendum and have Switzerland ban the World Economic
Forum. Kick them out. They can go to Saudi Arabia or to, I don't know where.
Dubai, right?
But I would hold gold and silver. Actually, silver technically looks good because the speculators are pretty much given up. And fundamentally, I think palladium and platinum also look very good at the present time.
Yeah.
But I'm not holding gold because I think it will go up next week. You understand? I want to have my own central bank, and so I'm holding gold, and I hold some here in Thailand because I am afraid that when the shit will hit the fan, you won't be able to travel. You won't be able to bring your gold, say, from Singapore or Hong Kong or from Switzerland to Thailand. So I also have a large portfolio of Thai stocks simply because I want to have money in the country.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because when they do lock things down, I mean, I heard stories of people being stuck in some countries that they didn't want to be in long term, but the countries just closed their borders.
Money, couldn't transfer funds and so forth.
Let's say Dr. Faber, silver specifically hits $100, $200 an ounce. Will it be nationalized? Will any mines get nationalized?
Look, that I really can't answer, because when I grew up, the government was regarded in a relatively high esteem. In other words, they were respected. And one thought of someone in government, certainly in Switzerland, as honest.
Right.
Not 100% honest, but say honest, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
I think everybody can see how dishonest these characters are, how corrupt they are, how corrupted justice has become. I don't know whether you followed just yesterday, this lawyer for the Obamas and the Clintons was acquitted. I mean, this is a travesty of the law.
Yeah.
Travesty. And so I think that, and also the lockdowns, I would never have, I grew up and people told me at school, at university, in every social event, democracy is freedom. Well, I have to tell you, I have a military government in Thailand. I have much more freedom in Thailand than anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, but for sure, I can't vote. But I'm not interested to vote for people who are dishonest in the Western world either.
Yeah.
Give me an honest politician. Give me one with some education. You cannot succeed in today's politics without having a twisted mind.
I agree. It seems like it's all falling apart right now. And what all we can do is
I
we can
don't
sit
know
back.
whether they will take it away, but I think that it's not very realistic to think that the government will have sufficient employees to run through all the private properties everywhere with the detectors.
Yeah.
Right.
And most back in 1933, most people ignored the government and did not hand in their gold. I saw a
Correct.
study that 80 or 90% of the people refused and just ignored the government and kept their gold hidden.
Yes, that's probably true, but I think the idea was, to take it away, and that will be in future maybe also the idea. But you understand, the government can also come to you and say, well, you have a house. Okay, you can keep it, but your taxes go up by this much. So if you look at all the castles in Europe, most of them were in ruins because nobody could afford it anymore.
Yeah.
That is a threat. And number two, they can also, on your assets, they can introduce wealth taxes and so forth. And on bitcoins and so forth, they can declare it illegal. And the argument for people to use the cryptocurrencies, of course, the government can't find it. But if you want to buy some goods at the department stores, you will have to convert it first, and then the government can ask, well, where did you have it? The moment an unpleasant government official asks questions, he can ask them for ages, doesn't cost him anything, but you have to defend yourself, and
Right.
that may be very costly. So I tell you, I don't think I will live in 100 years, so it's not really my concern.
Yeah.
But say for the next 10 years, I still have some hopes. Okay.
Dr. Faber, thank you very much for joining us. We really
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
My pleasure.
We'll
Bye-bye.
talk to you again in a few months.
Okay, great. Have a nice evening. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.